Bobby Broyles and Tim McDonald here. Should be a really interesting matchup. Buckle up. If you're not watching, you got some problems.
Happy Friday and welcome into the latest edition of CAA Football's 12 Teams in 12 Days series presented by Geico. I'm Bobby Broyles alongside Tim McDonald. Our fifth team is Maine, as the Black Bears have a new head coach in Joe Harris-Simiak after Jack Cosgrove retired at the end of last season. Harris-Simiak might be the youngest Division I head coach, but he's no stranger of CAA football or the Maine program.
Yeah, it's not as if they just hired a random young guy off the streets. I mean, this is a guy in Harris-Simiak who the past 2 seasons he was Maine's defensive coordinator. He's only 30 years old, but he's been in Orono since 2011 with the program. So talking with Pat Ricard at Media Day, just a lot of excitement, it's a new sense of refreshment for this team, I think, moving forward. I think it's going to start defensively. You know, you think of a Maine program, in 2013 this team won 10 games. Last 2 years, it just hasn't been consistently what you expect from Maine. It's been 5-6, 3-8, and again, I think defensively they've been solid. The last year alone, look at the defensive stats up and down the board. A team who only allowed 21.5 points per game. 9 starters are back this year. I think Pat Ricard, defensive lineman, who's a guy who I think could be one of the best players defensively in CAA football, tied with Victor Ochi of Stony Brook last year, a pretty good player with 16.5 tackles for loss. Christoph Malumba-Shimanga, you look at him, a guy who's also played. Last year he had a lot of injuries, only played in 8 games and 37 tackles. If those 2 players are back for this defense, which they are obviously, I think they're going to be the key moving this team forward. Black hole defense, as you like to call it. I know you love that. But number 2 last year in CAA football in rush defense, 110 yards per game. Number 3 in total defense. That's where it starts. If you're Harris-Simiak, a defensive-minded guy, a young coach trying to develop his own identity as a new head coach, you start with the defense if you're looking at Maine. Think of the games that they lost last year. Outside of the 2 FBS games, outside of the Richmond game, 21 points given up to Yale, 13 points given up to Villanova, 10 points given up to Towson. The defense was in it. The defense was in it, and we'll get into the offense, but I think defensively that's where you start looking at the backbone of Maine in 2016.
Here's the new head coach talking at Media Day about his 2 seniors and the expectations for the defense in 2016.
Yeah, those 2 are definitely our 2 leaders on defense. You know, they do a great job on and off the field with our guys, and really they've been playing since they were redshirt freshmen, so that also helps. I think anytime you can get experience with playing CAA football, that's a huge step into your development. Our secondary, if you look at it, we don't have a senior, but all those guys are returning and have played. So we're really excited about the defensive unit. Darius Green's another guy on the D-line that should contribute heavily. But we're looking, Maine has a tradition of great defense, and we're just looking to keep that going next year, and we shouldn't have a problem doing that.
On the offensive side, Maine returns 10 starters along with a new offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen. And Tim, that is a very familiar name in CAA football, isn't it?
Liam Cohen, the former UMass quarterback. He's been a coach in college football since his playing days ended. But again, you remember him and Victor Cruz back in the old UMass days, 2004 to 2008, that stretch. Had a very successful, actually went to the national championship with them. He's a guy who's worked, like I said, he's been at Rhodey, he's been at Brown, he was at UMass the last couple of years. I expect him to help out the offense right away. He's taking over offensive play calling duties, a very young coaching staff as well with Harris-Simiak at the ground. Look at the quarterback position is obviously key, and we always talk about the quarterbacks because that's what happens when you preview teams. You have to talk about the most important position. You look at Dan Collins, you look at Drew Belcher, 2 guys who both have played. It's not as if they're new guys. Dan Collins is now a senior. Belcher is now a redshirt junior. They're going to have their 2 top receivers back, and Jordan Dunn and Micah Wright. Also, starting running back, Nigel Beckford is back. There's a lot of skill guys. If you have 10 starters back, the comfortability is going to be there on offense. There needs to be a little bit more production. As I said, easier said than done, and I'm standing here on camera, so it's a lot easier to say, but only 14.9 points per game. Same with Delaware. When you have a defense like Maine's and your offense is only scoring 15 points a game, it's going to be very hard to sustain. Look at the offensive line. Everyone is back. I mean, Bruce Johnson, who's an all-conference guy and All-American, he's gone, but still that offensive line is back. So up and down the board, you have to feel pretty good if you're Maine offensively. I think it's going to go down to consistency. It always does, but it's both quarterbacks, Dan Collins and Drew Belcher. Both of them together only accounted for 10 touchdowns passing last year. I think we need to see a little bit more progression if Maine is going to put some more points up on the board and be a little bit more competitive, especially when the defense plays so well.
Coach Harris-Simiak spoke with our crew on the possible new-look offense for the Black Bears in 2016.
Yeah, as I just said, CAA football experience is huge. Our skill positions, Jordan Dunn is a senior wideout, Micah Wright, 2 all-league players for us. They're coming back. Our whole offensive line, besides one guy, Bruce Johnson, who who's getting a chance with the Eagles. So we got a lot of guys coming back there. So we're just excited about the growth and development that's taking place on that side of the ball. New offense. Liam Cohen, new offensive coordinator. So it's a whole new deal over there. So we're going to have a chance to maybe surprise some people with some of the things we're going to do. But I think we're really going to be complementary between our offense and our defense and our special teams.
It was sad to see Cosgrove end his long tenure, but also excited to see what Maine looks like under a new leader. Maine's 2016 schedule once again is highlighted with back-to-back FBS games to start off the year. First with a trip to take on UConn, followed by a trip to Toledo out of the MAC. Both contests can be seen on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app.
Remember, we made a huge deal last year because it was a big deal. When does the CAA football team play 2 FBS teams?
Yeah.
And of course, same exact hole almost a year later. Last year there was a bye week in between. This year there's no bye week in between. Granted, it's a Thursday and Saturday, but again, 2 FBS, not only playing 2, but back-to-back. It's just, I don't know how you approach that as a player, how you approach that as a coach. You have to take it with a grain of salt and just say, well, what else do we have to lose?
Yep.
Maine's a team last year that I don't think it really affects them. I don't think they opened the year with an 0-2 record and said, well, the season's over. But you think about the meat of the schedule. Once you play 2 FBS and then you come back and you have to play CAA football. I mean, this year, think about it. 2 FBS games to start, then you come back home and play James Madison. So you play 2 FBS and then James Madison. That's a game on the American Sports Network. But up and down the board, a very tough schedule. I look at the other key games, at Delaware, at William & Mary, and at Stony Brook. Again, you do get Villanova and New Hampshire at home and some other teams at home. It's just a very difficult and daunting schedule. The good news is you did it last year, so you know what to expect out of the gates. But again, a very tough start, and I think if they can survive that tough start, stay healthy, get a couple of guys under center, get back into the playing mode, then I think Maine will be okay.
Like we said, Maine opens its season on the road at UConn Thursday night, September the 1st at 7 p.m. on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app.
Right now on CAFootball.com.
Go there.
As well as our social media platforms. You can check out a one-on-one interview with Pat Ricard, who was the first ever Maine football player to come to Media Day. Check it out right now.
Tim and I are taking the weekend off, but we'll be back on Monday to continue CAA Football's 12 Teams in 12 Days series presented by Geico with the New Hampshire Wildcats. Have a great weekend.